Welcome to our podcast offerings, where we invite you to take responsibility for your own well-being, reclaim your energetic sovereignty, embody authentic living, and come home to your true self. We are two sisters, two oceans apart. Maya Lotz from the Energy for Life Wellbeing Practice, and Sandy Lotz from the Inspired Life Coaching Practice. Together we bring you the Ocean of Abundance podcast and lots of possibilities to engage with when you choose to align with the wisdom of nature. In today's episode, as promised in our previous podcast, we are chatting to you about our new website, Lots of Possibilities. It's a landing space for our respective well-being practices, Inspired Life and Energy for Life, as well as our new collaborative offering, Sanctuary for Life. Welcome, Sandy. Lovely to have you here today.
Hi, Maya. It is great to be talking about our new collaboration. Finally, we've been dreaming about this for some time.
So we started doing the podcast together some time ago. Our first series was Crossing the Ocean of Grief, and that just went into a series about nature, which then evolved to us talking about Reiki and then the Reiki precepts. And then as we kept chatting, somewhere along the line there, the dream came up of future and further collaborations. And here we are, lots of possibilities.
I know, and isn't it marvelous? In April, it would be a year since we had the conversation, and on a whim, I asked, shall we try and capture the web domain? And we had no idea what we were going to do with it, but we just decided, let's do it. It's one of those moments where you have to either take action and take a risk and do something with it, or say, nah, maybe later. And we jumped, and I love it. And we just parked it for a while and kept dreaming. And then eventually in January this year, we finally managed to be in the same physical space and time. And what a fabulous time to then work together on a collaboration in real time.
Yeah, and this is definitely a project where things evolve organically. We're never quite sure what the next thing will be, but it just keeps rolling. And we obviously have core foundations, which we'll come to in a moment. But before we go there, lots of possibilities. What's in a name, Sandy? We've written a blog post about it on our website, but where does the name come from?
Okay, so for those who don't know yet, Lots of Possibilities is actually spelled Lotz, as in zebra, of possibilities.com. And that is a play on our maiden name, Lotz, Lotz. And so also translate that to Lots, Lots, which means plenty, many, abundance, endless possibilities to get to a certain place, to find solutions, ways to live, ways to heal. The quantum field of possibilities, the infinite field of possibilities, if we can just step outside of the expectation of how it should unfold. And also the timeline. It's not just how it should unfold, but in the timeline that we sometimes expect things to show up. I think we can talk about that later, but it's all about why people miss that they are manifesting things because we don't recognize the showing up of it, right?
Yeah. So we are two sisters and we are two oceans apart. And we will include Ram Dass's well-known quote here: think you're enlightened, spend time with your family. So us collaborating and creating this digital space and products and this podcast is as much part of our well-being journey as an offering to others.
Absolutely, because it reminds me of, for us two energetic sovereign beings to collaborate after being oceans apart, even though we were our siblings. We needed to create a energetic space that was a safe container for both of us to work next to one another. And so, yeah, I think that was part of our process. Reminds me of bands. If they go into a studio, they first have to get in sync before they can jam, right? It's like you go in there, maybe five egos in a band, and there's always this joke about, park the ego at the door, but creative beings have an idea and a dream, but they have to overlap. And you have to mesh the energies when you collaborate together. So, yeah, we had to play with finding a vessel to contain our effort. And I think it's so beautiful that we decided to call the space that we want to create for others Sanctuary for Life.
So, sanctuary for life, in Sandy's research, she came across this description. Any environment where the energy required to survive is minimized so the energy available to thrive is maximized. And to pick up here on what we just touched on, our focus here is on self care. We have mentioned in our past podcasts, and it's very integral to our whole approach here on Sanctuary for Life and as Lots of Possibilities, is self-care. We have this tendency that we want other to change. And in our pursuit of being non-attached, and it is something that we discussed, it's like expectations creep in. We're human. But the reality is that the only person you can change is yourself. And this is part of the Reiki path we both follow. If I start taking care of me, then there are lots of possibilities. Things start changing. But as long as I look outside of me and I don't come to self first, we keep getting blocked and we keep getting stuck. So Sanctuary for Life, our focus here is it's not only a place or a space, but it also pertains to our psychological safety and our well-being. So it's a space where you land as you are. And wherever you are in your journey home to your true self, we hope that you'll find it's a space where the ego can rest and the biological self can simply exist without performing or masking. And where we share the glimmers and the tools that have helped us to learn to honor our natural cycles, to rest when we're tired, eat when we're hungry, rather than chasing the artificial grind of productivity. Where, because our offerings and what we share with you are self-paced and self-timed, and you do it from the comfort of your own home, it also offers you sensory softness. So you can choose how loud it is, how comfortable you are, how often you visit, because self-sovereignty is this underlying core element in everything that we are hoping to share with you here.
That's so well put. And something that comes to mind for me is because we keep reminding people that we are biologically sisters, right? Real sisters in life. And so we come from the same line. However, even though we are family and blood relatives and both women, our needs are different. Just because we are family genetically doesn't mean my self care will look like your self care. And I think that's sometimes a bit of a challenge for people in families dynamics or close relationships because everybody needs to know what their needs are so that they personally can take care of that. Some of what somebody else might do might apply to me, but not all of it. And so the space that we created are suggestions, options, offerings. You have to taper it and curate it for yourself to fit your needs at the time. And that can change depending on what season you are in your life, depending on what's showing up for you. So it's forever evolving. You mentioned the fact that the website was forever evolving. And here I'm going to laugh because we do like to play with humor a little bit. And I think our website almost came about the same way we both cook. What's available today? And let's see what I can create. Self-care is almost something similar, right? Today I need a little bit more of this and a dose less of that. Tomorrow I might need more sunshine, but today I'm indoors. And to just be able to play with that with some kind of curiosity.
I like that you mentioned play because it is an element here that will sneak in. We are not stoic and serious all the time. And that is the concept of Leela that we come back to the lots of possibilities. Leela is the Sanskrit word for playing with the light of the universe, to consciously co create with the universe. And it is playful. Life can be challenging, it has tides and moods and seasons, and not every day is the ideal temperature and climate for your needs. But if we approach life with a little bit more sense of lightness and playfulness and curiosity and adventure, not only does it flick us out of that left brain hardcore thinking and more into the imaginative space, but it just helps lighten all the stories in our body, and it helps free us up.
Right. And if you think of lots of possibilities, there's no ways that if you have a set idea of how something should look or play out, that you're really going to tap into the field of possibilities. Because then it's either one or two possibilities, right? You already decided that there's either a yes or a no, or a black or a white, or a it worked or didn't. But if you let go of that and you play with energy, because energy moves. I mean, energy that's focused beam on me will burn after a while. It's moving, it's forever evolving. That's the essence of energy. So, yeah, we need to be a little bit like water going down the river of life, playing around the rocks and into the crevices and soaking into the ground. And our self care will kind of follow the same path of evolving, growing, moving like we move, sometimes slower and sometimes faster, sometimes more intense, and sometimes we don't need so much because we're well balanced at this point. But it never stops.
No, it's definitely ever evolving. Yeah. And just as we create a sanctuary for ourselves in our homes, we create physical sanctuaries, and we create space in our life and our home and our daily energy management approach. Choosing when to engage, how to engage, and what to engage with. But we also cultivate a sanctuary within, and that's what you're talking about now. And we begin with external modifications to support our journey home to our true self, which takes as long as it takes, and there's no right or wrong way to do it, and there's no time frame. It's just, as you say, learning to flow with life. And this thing called life is uncertain. And we've come out of a paradigm where there was a lot of thinking geared towards fixed and definite. And life is not like that. It's very fluid. And we can be uncomfortable with uncertainty, or we can be curious. And I'll give a very personal example here. So, life for me is very intense, and it can be a very loud, vibrant place. What we want to offer in Sanctuary for Life is that who you are as you are, there's nothing broken, there's nothing to fix, there's not an end game here. You're wanting a space where you are accepted as you are, wherever you are at this point of time in your life journey.
I was going to comment on the end game. The closest I would come to, for me personally, what I would want as an end game, which I hope is eternal, not an end like in full stop, is a sense of peace with what is. You know, when you find those sweet moments in life where my life is not going exactly the way I would love to see it, like in a movie, but somehow in my day, I can find appreciation for the small things and the sweet spots. I didn't change my externals. I didn't all of a sudden win the lottery. I managed to get to some form of peace within, despite what is going on the outside, whether it's a painful arm or too much laundry or noisy neighbors. That's the texture of what I would say for me the end game would be peace and harmony. And that's what I think I mean with a homecoming.
Yeah, it's a sense of acceptance and that sense of self acceptance. That I can be okay with who I am in essence and what my unique expression of being human is. And there's a sense of softening because I think the fixed outcomes and hard and fast outcomes, it's all fear driven. And where we're leaning into here is, it's that thing where people say, if I lose 5 kgs then, or if I have a this then. And this is not what we're saying here. We're saying, as you are right now, you are whole. You are a sovereign being already. You're just somewhere on your journey. And if you can start there, embrace who is here today, lean in towards embracing that person, then we are in this journey together of self-care, self-acceptance. And the more we do that, the softer connecting with others become, the more the world around us changes, even though we are doing the work internally. And how that's
Yeah.
expressed is unique to each of us.
And I was wondering whether, as you describe that process of how we find self compassion, self acceptance for who I am right now, just the way I am, the way I express, if I can do that, which is really a tall order, because most of us are very harsh on ourselves. But if I get an inkling of what that feels like, then other doesn't seem to be other. They seem to be an extension of me on some level, because I think we look at the differences between people to make them other, but there's more commonality in our humanity of we're all struggling with the same things, and that makes us more similar than other. This life is hard for a lot of us. It's not meant to be anything but an exploration or a discovery. I don't think some people have easy lives and others don't. I think we have lives and we have challenges and we're human and we have emotions and we have expectations and we need to learn to love ourselves. And we're all trying to do that.
I think that for me, when I kept hearing the term self-sovereign or sovereign being, that's where you have that aha moment. And the more I worked with that, because I'd already embarked on a journey where I realized many of us are seekers and wayfinders, and we stay in the sort of intellectual realm, or we try another thing and we do, but we don't integrate. It doesn't become lifestyle. We can go through these phases where we do another course and another this. And what we're offering here are lifestyle suggestors. It's like that we have tried and that we live with, and as you say, modify to our own unique needs to find our way back to self. And I find that when I tend to my needs, take responsibility, then things like thinking about the other and what the other said and what the other whatever. And I started saying to myself, what here is mine? In this situation, what here is mine? Even when you want to complain or moan or whine about another, what here right now is mine? Let other be other, because they are sovereign too, and I'm sovereign. No one's more than the other. But what here is mine? And to come back to emotions and self-acceptance. So as somebody who has experienced a lot of overwhelm in my life and can overthink, and who has had her fair share of meltdowns, and there comes a thing where you're almost become afraid of even pleasant emotions, let alone the unpleasant ones. So you want to skirt it. And I once used the analogy of I learned slowly over time to look at those moments the way you would look at a gecko in the garden. You're not going to pounce on the gecko. If you really want to take a long look at the gecko, you're going to approach softly and slowly, or a bird if you're a bird watcher. You don't shout at the top of your voice, hey, look, there's a bird. And it's the same with comfortable or uncomfortable emotions or experiences. They come up, or a challenge, or there's a thought in your mind. But if I can just remember for that moment, I don't have to stare it in the face. I'm just going to look at it from a distance, and then I can begin to get more interested and explore it more. That helps me lean in towards more acceptance. And then it's easier to ride the waves, surf the waves of all the nervous system moments. And we often hear this term about nervous system regulation. It doesn't mean we favor one state over the other, because all of them will arise. That's what makes us human, and they're all necessary. It means that the transitioning between the states becomes a smoother wave ride, as it were.
I like how you describe that, and thanks for using yourself as an example. Something that I heard was exactly the fact that curiosity, that lila again, that oh, there's that whatever I want to call the emotion. And sometimes because we go through a phase where a lot of them are difficult or hard emotions to work with, we could have a tendency to not want to feel anything. And you so beautifully said that it is important to be curious and interested and about what is coming up for us, maybe ask some questions. Oh, that's interesting. What's that about? So that we can just play with it a little bit, give it some attention, but not let it take over the moment completely. But once we've been more comfortable with sitting with the difficult emotions, we can eventually progress to start feeling other emotions as well. It won't just always be the dark and the difficult. There might be some lighter, more playful, more fun moments. But because it's energy, our body doesn't really know whether I am scared because I'm doing an exam or excited because I'm going on a Big Dipper ride. In my body, that feels very similar. Anticipation is anticipation. It could be, it's excitement and anxiety mix. And so my body might send me information, or I might not recognize that this feeling in my body actually feels a little bit like what it feels like before an exam, but actually I'm excited about the vacation coming up.
And I think you're touching on the whole non-duality there. We were raised in the good, bad, happy, sad world, but it's and. They're all there. People have joyous occasions and a thread of melancholy runs through, or a tear. We separated them out, and it's a spectrum. The emotions are the spectrum. They're all there every day, scattered through our lives. It's not either or. The one isn't good or the other one is bad. They're all what make us human and that add to the texture of our lives. And it's kind of the fear that then says, oh, this one's a bad one, this isn't a good one. Too much of this is also a bad thing. Whereas, as you say, if we have that sense of curiosity and allowing them to be there. And I want to circle back to Sanctuary of Life now. We also start bracing. And so when we brace against what we perceive to be negative or bad, and you and I prefer using uncomfortable emotions or situations, then we also start excluding on that pendulum swing the other side of it. And what we are saying here with the Sanctuary of Life, our online heart space, it's this invitation and this acceptance. You mentioned this somewhere, and I don't think we've shared it with our listeners yet. I say vulnerability is my gift, and in the acceptance of that, a lot of things are unlocking for me. And then you responded and you said you think that relating to one another is vulnerability. Can you remember what you said?
Yeah, this comes from the work from Brene Brown, actually. So, vulnerability is the way we make connections, right? We can only make a connection through vulnerability, through shared humanity. But we live in a society where we would prefer showing my cool side. I was listening to a Trey talk this morning about psoas and fascia release. And they mentioned once again, if animals are scared, they shake and quiver and they don't care who watches them, right? We don't. We brace ourselves, like you said. But what happens to that energy? And so, if I was okay with my vulnerability in that moment, I would probably make a deeper connection with the other humans that could also be vulnerable with watching me being vulnerable. And it's not like they do the work for me, they just hold the space for me. They don't want me to be other than what I'm experiencing, and they can acknowledge that this is part of the human dilemma, if you want to make it a dilemma, or the human gift, if you want to make it a gift. We are vulnerable, and that's what makes us human. And everybody's got their own sense and sensibilities, and things that I can do well, somebody else might struggle with, and vice versa. And it's not right or wrong. It's how we help one another in a society. But we have to accept that people are human and that they are allowed to have vulnerabilities. And how can we support one another? How can we rally around one another by giving them space to figure it out for themselves?
I love what you're saying there because you're underlying there's nothing to fix here. And you're talking about compassionate presence and you're talking about acceptance and holding space for another. And indeed, I use the word brace, but the word mask or masking is very prominent at the moment. Everyone masks. And I think that is where this, I almost use the word obsession towards connection at the moment comes from. And the more people try and connect, the less they can. But if you're still bracing and wearing the mask and not showing up vulnerable, the less you're connecting. And maybe that's why you need more people and another gathering and another this and another that. And actually, less is more. Discernment is part of energy management. I'm not saying don't socialize. Each of us has a different energy quota there. I'm just saying part of our offering here is as you are, there's nothing to fix. You're just somewhere on your journey. Come with compassionate presence for yourself, and we hope to offer that for you, and we hope to offer you acceptance. As you were saying, it's like people will mask because we've become so uncomfortable with showing our humanity. Unless you show up human, I can't find you. I can only find the story you're telling. Um,
That's interesting about the I can only find the story because I think as human beings that are energetic beings, we sometimes pick up the disconnect between the story I'm hearing. The words is not matching the energy that I'm picking up, which really doesn't make for great connections because energy doesn't trick. There's no story around energy. So, how often do you hear somebody say something and then you feel like it's not aligned with the energy? I mean, use an example, like sometimes you listen to somebody who's a political opponent and they give a speech and there's just, it doesn't ring. I hear the words, but it's not ringing for me as plausible. Then I'm not connecting with that person at that time.
and it brings to mind for me all the rules around social engagements and, dare I say, expectations, which then means I don't know who's standing in front of me because they're wearing this mask and then that mask and they're bracing over here and their faces say one thing and their clothes say another, or maybe they say the same, but the energy I'm feeling isn't matched. I like silence, and we will talk in a future podcast about a future offering. But I think we need to circle back for a moment because we've already gone deep here into essence, what people can find on Lots of Possibilities, what's already here, what Sanctuary for Life is, and dive into that a little more.
Yeah, and so I would like to ask, can you just talk a little bit about the fern approach or a little bit about fascia? Because I feel with all this talk about energy and masking and bracing and wanting to be sovereign and self healers, if I dare say that word, because that is what we are if we self care. How does fascia play into that concept?
Okay, so let's back up a little bit. When Sandy arrived, I had done some quiet work and finally put words to paper for ideas that I actually conceptualized pretty much when she left for America. So 23 years ago almost. And then those ideas you have, and then you put it on the back burner, and then it comes again, and you learn more, and then that idea comes up again. And then we started working together, and these things come up. So by the time she came here, I had 4 concepts that I felt absolutely needed to be a part of our approach, what we offer, what we say, what we do, what we share, what we live. And is for us part of our lifestyle. And initially, how I'd laid them out wasn't necessarily in this order, but then Sandy came along and she said, I've got it. It's the FERN approach. FERN approach stands for fascia and trauma informed. We honor the body's story. It's yoga inspired, movement with intention. It's Reiki empowered as it taps into universal energy, and it's nature infused. It's grounded in the elements, and we view human beings not as separate, but as nature. So I have revisited my own Reiki trainings. Last year I did fascia and trauma informed Reiki with Christine Wishka, redoing all my levels. And this year, so inspired by hearing confirmation of the little threads and breadcrumbs I'd been following for years when I came across Christine Wishka's work. Now, she references many, many other people that I'd already read and studied. Then suddenly finding how I had intuitively worked and how I had shifted and shaped and changed not only my Energy for Life well-being practice and how I work with people and what I offer, but also my lifestyle adaptations actually is a real thing. And the more fascia came to the forefront, the more I wanted to know. And it is that sixth sense. It is our other sensory organ, and our body does keep the score. And with fascia and trauma informed work, we can unwind the stories and the patterns that keep us stuck. And we enter a world where we can weave a whole new web of life, as it were, for ourselves, because fascia is this web from beneath our feet to the top of our heads, and that we are not these 2D sketches we see in the biology book. We are so much more. And yoga and Reiki are wonderful modalities to help us access and work with our fascia. And of course, nature, the patterns and what we see in fascia and what we learn, nature reflects all of that back to us. But this is a whole podcast on its own. So I think we will put the sort of appetizer out there now, and there is on our website a little bit that you can read. There's also some other information if you look around Fern there, but we will, our next podcast, we can focus specifically on, what do you think, Sandy?
I think it might be more than one podcast there, Maya, but who knows? I am just super excited for what we have been able to achieve, collaborate on, create, our ongoing offerings, the resources that's available. So there's already information for people to look at, a couple of blogs, copies of the previous podcasts on. There's places for people to probably leave and comment for us or ask some questions if they have that. The Fern workbook is already available for those who want to take a look at.
So we'll put it in the show notes as well, but already right now, um, our Reiki Precepts phone wallpaper is there as a free download. And there's also the Sanctuary for Life Quick Start Guide, which you can already begin working with. And then there are other offerings, services, and products. Both Sandy and I am available for distance Reiki separately. And as she said, the Fern Approach Guide is there. Reiki infused yoga nidra, a digital guide for the heart that feels everything, and some tastes about what's coming up. You can click through to Sandy's practice, Inspired Life. You can click through to my practice, to the in-person offerings that I have in my area. And like we said, in our next podcast, maybe more than one, we will begin to unpack Fern. We also want to do an episode on the field of possibilities. And one of the offerings I'm working on and that we'll dedicate a podcast to is the Sovereign Circle, an offering that I'm busy finalizing and will make available via the website as well. It's a compassionate, silent, small group which will be available monthly or on request, but we'll unpack that in a whole website episode. Sandy has also written us a blog piece. I keep getting this wrong, Sandy. It's re-inspirement.
I call it, instead of retirement, I flipped it around and shook it up and said, I'm going into inspirement. And it's basically re-inspire about retirement, because sometimes it sounds like a full stop, fall off the edge of the cliff type of moment, and everything is just downhill from here. And it doesn't have to be that way. But once again, there are lots of possibilities, but we have to think a little bit more creatively about this new chapter of our lives, because quite frankly, with longevity and the way we are being held together by good healthcare forever and a day, we might spend a quarter of our lives there for some of us. And so we have learned so much during our lifetime that we have something to give still to this universe, and we have things to experience and to participate in. So if we have the willingness to explore, we will come up with a lot of creative ways to enjoy the quieter, the softer, the less strict, the less prescribed years of our lives. And I therefore call it inspirement.
I love it. And you have just entered that. And so we can look forward to your journey of your own inspirement.
Right. The heavy phases of going into retirement from a corporate job. And that does not mean that we are retiring from life. It just means we're closing a chapter and opening a whole new avenue. I hope you enjoy visiting our website, and thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We hope to have many more of these. I can see we've created some fun activities for us to collaborate on, and I'm excited about what the rest of this year is going to show us.
Thank you for listening and thank you for being here with me today, Sandy. And I look forward to our ever evolving journey, collaborating together and discovering more and finding our respective ways home. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will speak again with you next time, listeners. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Maya. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.